I want to tell you about a single fruit. A fruit so small you could hold 5 of them in one hand, that when you understand what it does inside your eye, not in your gut, not in your joints, but specifically inside your eye, you will never look at your grocery list the same way again. Here is what surprises most people. It is not exotic, it is not expensive. Most of you have seen it sitting in the health food aisle in a little bag, or sprinkled on top of someone else's oatmeal at brunch, and you have walked right past it without a second thought. And yet the research on what this fruit does to protect your vision as you age, the specific mechanism, the way it targets the exact structure most vulnerable to age-related damage, is some of the most compelling nutritional science I have come across in years of studying preventive medicine. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which fruit it is. More importantly, you will know why. And you will have a simple, honest, practical way to make it part of your daily life starting tomorrow. My name is Dr. Wellness. I work in preventive health, and today we are talking about your eyes. Stay with me. But before we get into it, I want to hear from you. Drop your name and your age in the comments right now. Tell me where you are watching from. Are you in Texas, Arizona, Canada? And tell me this. When was the last time you actually worried about your eyesight? Not in passing. Really worried. Because I think more of you are thinking about this than you let on. I read every comment. Let me know you are here. And if this is your first time on this channel, welcome. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what we talk about here is the kind of information that genuinely changes how you live every single week. All right, let us get into it. What is actually happening inside your aging eye? Let me start with something nobody explains clearly enough. Your eye is not just an organ that processes light. It is one of the most metabolically demanding tissues in your entire body. The retina, that paper-thin layer at the back of your eye that turns light into the signals your brain reads as vision, burns energy at an extraordinary rate. It never stops. It never rests. Even while you sleep, those cells are working. And here is what that means for you. All that metabolic activity generates something called oxidative stress. Think of it like exhaust from an engine that never shuts off. The harder the engine runs, the more exhaust it produces. Your retinal cells are running constantly, so they produce a constant stream of free radicals, unstable molecules that, left unchecked, damage the very structures they came from. Now here is where it gets specifically important if you are over 60. Your body's internal antioxidant defenses, the systems you were born with to neutralize those free radicals, weaken with age. They simply do not work as efficiently at 68 as they did at 38. This is not a failure on your part, it is biology. But what it means practically is that the gap between the oxidative stress your eyes generate and your body's ability to manage it widens every decade. And it is in that gap, that quiet widening gap, where the damage begins. Cataracts, macular degeneration, declining night vision, growing sensitivity to headlights and glare. These are not random events that happen to unlucky people. They are the slow, cumulative result of oxidative stress building up in tissue that no longer has the defenses it once had. So what do most people do about this? Mostly nothing. Not because they do not care about their eyes, but because nobody has ever explained the mechanism clearly enough to make it feel real. It feels distant. It feels like something that happens to other people. Until the day your ophthalmologist mentions your lens is starting to cloud. Until the day the street signs at night start to blur in a way they did not a year ago. Until your grandchild asks why you stopped driving after dark, and you do not have a good answer. Here is the point. The eyes you have right now are the only eyes you will ever get. There is no upgrade, no replacement. And the decisions you make about what you eat, not dramatically, not with some complicated regimen, but quietly and consistently over years, shape what happens to them. That is the foundation. That is why what I am about to tell you matters. The one fruit researchers keep coming back to most nutrition videos about eye health hand you a list. 6 fruits, 8 vegetables, a dozen supplements. I am not going to do that today, because I think lists without understanding are forgettable by tomorrow morning. Instead, I want to walk you through the one fruit that lines up most precisely with what your aging eye actually needs, and the reason has everything to do with where it works. Not your bloodstream generally, not your stomach, directly in the macula. If you do not know what the macula is, stay with me, because this is the whole story. The macula is a tiny, specialized region at the center of your retina, roughly the size of a pencil eraser. It is responsible for almost everything you think of as sharp vision. Reading a menu, recognizing your grandchild's face across a room, threading a needle, seeing the numbers on your phone. All of that razor-sharp central vision comes from the macula. Here is what makes the macula extraordinary, and also extraordinarily vulnerable. It contains a unique layer of pigment called macular pigment, built primarily from two plant compounds, lutein and zeaxanthin. These pigments act like a built-in pair of sunglasses sitting directly on top of your most sensitive light-receiving cells. They absorb high-energy blue light before it ever reaches those cells. They are a chemical shield, and they are the single most studied protective factor against age-related macular degeneration, or AMD, which remains the leading cause of irreversible vision loss in adults over 50 across the developed world. And here is the number that should stop you cold. People with higher macular pigment density have been shown, across multiple population studies, to carry meaningfully lower risk of developing AMD. Not a small difference, a meaningful one. Now here is the critical piece nobody tells you. Your body cannot manufacture lutein or zeaxanthin. Not one molecule. Every bit of macular pigment protecting your central vision right now came from food you ate, sometimes decades ago. And if you are not replenishing it, it thins, quietly, invisibly, with no symptoms at all until the damage is already underway. Most adults are not getting nearly enough. National dietary surveys consistently show the average American gets a small fraction of what researchers consider a meaningful protective intake. That gap, the space between what most people eat and what the macula actually needs, is where the opportunity lives. So the question becomes, what food delivers lutein, zeaxanthin, and the supporting nutrients the macula needs, in a form your body can actually absorb, in a way a regular person could realistically eat every week for the rest of their life? That is the question the research answers. And the answer surprises almost everyone. The fruit and the science behind why most people guess blueberries. Good instinct, and I will come back to that. Some guess oranges, also reasonable. A few guess papaya or mango because of the color. But when you look at the studies that specifically measure macular pigment and the foods most reliably shown to raise it, one small, unassuming fruit keeps appearing at the top of the list. Goji berries, sometimes labeled wolfberries. Here is why this little dried berry earns its place ahead of almost everything else on the shelf. First, and this is the headline finding, goji berries contain the highest concentration of zeaxanthin of any commonly eaten food on Earth. Not a modest amount. The highest. Researchers studying elderly adults gave a daily portion of wolfberries over several weeks and measured a real physical increase in macular pigment optical density, along with a rise in blood zeaxanthin levels. This was not a theoretical benefit calculated on paper. It was a measured change in the actual pigment sitting on top of the macula in real people, in a real study. Second, unlike many plant sources of these pigments, the zeaxanthin in goji berries exists largely in a form called zeaxanthin dipalmitate, which early research suggests may be absorbed and utilized with notable efficiency. This matters more than people realize, because lutein and zeaxanthin from some sources pass through the digestive system largely unused. A pigment sitting in a food does you no good if your body cannot actually pull it out and deliver it to your eye. Third, vitamin C. Goji berries carry a meaningful dose of vitamin C, and vitamin C is specifically critical for the lens of your eye. The lens holds one of the highest concentrations of vitamin C of any tissue in the human body, using it to defend its proteins against the slow oxidative damage that, over decades, contributes to cataract formation. Large population studies, including the long-running Blue Mountains Eye study, have linked higher vitamin C intake with meaningfully lower rates of cataract over time. Fourth, beta-carotene and zinc. Goji berries contain both, and both were part of the nutrient combination studied in the landmark age-related eye disease studies. The research that first demonstrated a specific formulation of nutrients could slow the progression of AMD in people who already had early signs of it. So in one small handful of berries, smaller than a deck of cards, you have zeaxanthin for the macula, vitamin C for the lens, and beta-carotene and zinc supporting the broader antioxidant system of the eye. Several layers of protection, several structures addressed at once. Let me tell you about a woman I will describe to you as Carol. She was 71. She came in not because of a vision emergency, but because she had noticed she was holding her phone farther and farther away, and colors on her television had started to look a little washed out to her. Her eye doctor had flagged early, mild thinning of her macular pigment at her last visit. Nothing urgent, but worth paying attention to. Carol was already eating reasonably well. Salads a few times a week, the occasional orange, but almost nothing that specifically targeted the macula in a concentrated way. We made one change. She started adding a small handful of dried goji berries to her morning oatmeal and to her afternoon yogurt, roughly 2 tablespoons total across the day. Nothing dramatic, no supplements, no overhaul of her diet. At her follow-up exam nearly a year later, her ophthalmologist noted her macular measurements were stable, holding steady rather than continuing to thin. Carol was not dramatic about it either. She told me, "I think the berries are doing something. I cannot prove causality from one person's experience. But the mechanism is sound, the research is consistent, and Carol still keeps a bag of them in her pantry." If this is helping you understand something you did not know before, type the number 2 in the comments right now. Just the number 2. It tells me you are here, and honestly, it helps this video reach other people who need to hear it. The absorption secret nobody talks about. Here is the piece almost no nutrition video for eye health ever covers. Eating the right nutrients is only half the equation. The other half is whether your body can actually absorb them. Lutein and zeaxanthin are fat-soluble compounds. That means they need dietary fat present in the same meal to be absorbed efficiently into your bloodstream and eventually into your macula. Eat your goji berries completely dry, on their own with nothing else, and you leave a meaningful portion of their benefit on the table. Pair them with a small handful of nuts, a spoonful of plain yogurt, or a drizzle of olive oil over the oatmeal they are sitting in, and absorption improves considerably. Researchers studying fat-soluble carotenoid absorption from meals have measured differences of several-fold between a fat-free version of a meal and one with even a modest amount of healthy fat added. There is also a practical implication for anyone who already eats leafy greens. The lutein in spinach and kale is fat-soluble too. Eating those greens with absolutely no fat, plain, undressed, steamed, means you are absorbing a small fraction of what is actually in the plate. Add a drizzle of olive oil or a few slices of avocado, and the picture changes dramatically. I want to be honest with you about one more thing, because I think honesty matters more than hype. Goji berries will not restore vision that has already been significantly lost. If you already have advanced macular degeneration, this is not a fruit that reverses it. If your cataracts have progressed to the point where your surgeon is already discussing a procedure, this conversation will not change that outcome. What the research supports is prevention and slowing, protecting macular pigment in eyes that still have it, supporting lens clarity in eyes that have not yet crossed into significant cataract territory, reducing the rate at which the underlying processes progress. These are exactly the outcomes that matter most to the people watching this, who are 60, 65, 70, who still have good vision today and want to hold on to it. The window for food to make a difference is not after the damage is already done. The window is now while the pigment is still there to protect, while the lens is still clear enough to be defended. If you are genuinely thinking about making a change after watching this, type the number 4 in the comments. Just the number 4. I love seeing those come in. The supporting cast. Actually, pause for a second. If this video has given you something useful so far, do me one favor. Hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second. And if you have a parent, a spouse, a friend whose eyesight you think about, send them this video today. Not tomorrow. Today. Sharing information like this is one of the kindest, quietest things you can do for someone you love. All right, back to the science. Goji berries are the anchor, but the eye is a complex system, and no single food covers all of it. Think of these as the team supporting your anchor. Blueberries and the blood vessel connection. The deep color in blueberries comes from anthocyanins, antioxidants with a particular affinity for small blood vessels. Your retina is fed by some of the most delicate capillaries in your entire circulatory system. And anthocyanins have been associated in research with better microvascular integrity and reduced inflammatory damage in those vessels. A small handful several mornings a week is plenty. Frozen works just as well as fresh, and it is considerably cheaper. Oranges and the lens connection. Whole oranges, not juice. Whole oranges deliver vitamin C alongside bioflavonoids, concentrated in the white pith beneath the peel, compounds that work alongside vitamin C to support the lens and the small vessels around it. Population studies looking at long-term vitamin C intake have consistently found lower rates of nuclear cataract among people with the highest intake. Avocado, the absorption multiplier. This is not optional if you want to get the most from everything else on this list. Half an avocado added to a salad or spread on toast dramatically increases how much lutein and zeaxanthin your body pulls from every other food eaten alongside it, sometimes by several times over compared with a completely fat-free meal. Papaya and mango for beta-carotene, whenever they are in season and affordable. Not essential, but a welcome rotation. Here is what a simple weekly rhythm looks like. No complicated schedule. No measuring spoons. Just a quiet pattern you barely have to think about after the first couple of weeks. Mornings, a small handful of dried goji berries stirred into oatmeal, yogurt, or a smoothie with a source of healthy fat nearby. This is your anchor. This is the non-negotiable piece. 3 or 4 mornings a week, a small bowl of blueberries. 3 or 4 times a week, half an avocado on a salad or toast. Most days, a whole orange as an afternoon snack. Not juice, the whole fruit. When it is available, a few slices of papaya or mango as your occasional rotation. That is the entire program. No supplements required to start, no exotic ingredients. Just a quiet weekly rhythm that your eyes, specifically, will benefit from across the years. The silent saboteur most people miss. Now I want to talk about one more thing, because I have watched people make every right dietary choice and still lose ground on their vision. And when I looked closely at why, the answer was rarely the fruit they were or were not eating. It was something quietly working against everything else. Uncontrolled blood sugar. Diabetic retinopathy, the eye damage caused by chronically elevated blood sugar, is now the leading cause of new blindness among working-age adults in the United States. But here is what many people do not realize.